we tend to have this limited view and this limited understanding of what abuse is, and it usually stems from, how much exposure we have to it. We speak interpersonal or person on person a violation, and we term that abuse, and the definition or the buck sort of stops there. But as you've pointed out, Lila, this in our discussion this morning, it's very clear that the tactics, the underlying tactics, and the underlying system at play, which we find within the relationships, can also be found, within government systems, and can also be found within, as you pointed out, education systems, but it can be also found within other institutions, as well, especially religious
as well. And then the next issue is, how does this impact women?
All right. We'd now like to move our conversation on to what sort of impact this has on women.
Indeed. So besides the education system, there's the issue of how it impacts women, also religion, also media, and the economic system. But specifically with women, see, what they do is that they have to have control of everything. If you're going to have a totalitarian state, and if you want to manipulate and control everybody, you have to control all aspects of society.
Yeah.
So you have to have control of the media. You have to have control of the education system. You have to have control of, I did say media, the economy as well. And the segregation is then created so that people do not have leverage. They therefore cannot grow holistically, and therefore be a challenge to you if you want to have complete control of everybody else.
Yeah.
How does this impact women? Well, women, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, are the children's first teachers.
Yes.
The mother is the child's first teacher. Okay. If you took every single South African woman and educated and empowered every single South African woman through literacy, through the 3 R's, and equipped her with skills and so forth, how would that impact the future generation? Because we find that if the education system is collapsing and falling apart, and if we have problems with the education system, there's always the option of homeschooling.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to know how to teach. Mm-hmm. You yourself have to be learned. You yourself have to be educated. You yourself have to be creative and relaxed and calm and out of your reptilian brain and in your cerebral brain. And, Dr. Phil used to joke about how men have half the attention span of women, but women have 3 times the vocabulary. You understand?
Yes.
There was somebody who was on a hormonal treatment, and what happened was that he was increasing his testosterone.
Okay.
But he found that as the testosterone increased, the vocabulary dropped.
Okay.
So men have like the simplification genius, which also helps them to quickly identify a solution so that they can maximize their efforts.
Okay.
And it makes sense because historically speaking, if males have always been the protector and the providers, they need to be able to cut to the chase.
Yes.
You understand? In order to
life
provide life and death. Yeah. But if women are the ones that are taking care of small children, then it makes sense that we have more vocabulary. Why? Because that stimulates the children's minds. So just talking a lot.
Because he's speaking. Why?
Why? It stimulates the minds of children. Mm-hmm. So you find like there are some situations where the mothers are sitting and talking while the children are playing around them. Like that in itself is an ECD.
Yes.
Because you're busy talking to your friend while your kids are playing, but the children, they hear this constant chatter.
Yeah.
And also women have this empathy. So we tend to talk to babies. We tend to talk to toddlers. Mm-hmm. And the research does show that the more you talk to a baby, the more you talk to a child, it actually positively impacts the brain of a child.
Okay.
There's an organization called Naomi's Joy. It's a little shop in Fish Oak that actually sells kids stuff to facilitate the fostering of small babies that have been neglected.
Okay.
So these people actually temporarily foster these small babies just to talk to them, just to physically interact with the child so the child can develop properly mentally before the child is adopted.
Okay.
Because they find that what happens is you adopt a child that's been neglected, but the child was not able to develop the functioning properly as a result of being emotionally and verbally neglected. You understand? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, He gave us the gift of the gap. You understand? He gave us the gift of the gap so that we can stimulate the small minds of children and so that we can interact with children. And of course, if you keep women down, if you oppress women and if you block them from developing and from having education, it definitely negatively impacts children. because the more women are self-empowered and educated, the more we have leverage, either with homeschooling, and even if your child is in school, there's so much you can do to compensate for in whichever way the system is lacking or the system is dysfunctional. You understand?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, like I take a look at our own society, and I take a look at our own country, 27 years into a democracy. I know that not too long ago there was, and when I say not too long ago, I'm easily speaking 10 to 15 years ago, there was of course this huge movement into getting women educated, and
Yes.
women, particularly women of color, were given preference when it came to university applications and schooling applications and even job applications to a certain extent, and we still see it. But taking that into consideration and looking at our society now, has the move or the campaign actually been of benefit to society? Because it's one thing to educate a woman, but what quality of education is she receiving?
Yes,
Is
what
she
quality of
segregated education or a
indeed.
holistic
and
education?
is she receiving an education that's actually going to separate her from the children and separate her from the household?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be an education at work that's going to facilitate her role as a mother?
Yeah.
So, and some of that actually fell through the cracks. There was a fantastic literacy program. It's similar to, I've actually got a video on it on YouTube. It's lesson 14. If you go to the channel Tiger Independent Media, and if you go to the playlist dealing with Madrasa Arabic, it's lesson 14 that actually shows teaching a child to read through writing. It's a strategy that's also done North Africa, in some parts of North Africa, but they do it on like papyrus and then they wipe it off with water.
Okay.
And there's a sheikh, I forget his name, in Bointeville, he's got about 4 mudadi in Bointeville, and he got a goal to read Arabic in like a month.
Okay.
Because she wanted to be a muallima. She wanted to do like a course, but she couldn't read at all.
Okay.
So he got her to read within a month. And I had a student, Khalicha, and I did the same strategy with her. And she also, she converted to Islam, alhamdulillah. But I got her to read in a very short period of time using this method of writing, teaching a child to read through writing. Because if you can write it, then you can read it.
Wait, do they not teach that in schools anymore? Because that's how I learned Arabic.
Not as much, eh? Not as much.
That's
But where did you learn?
I was at Habibia.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it that much. No, look, they do writing, but it's not this. They don't test it. It's not the same as with like the whole verses of the Quran.
Okay.
So you got to write the whole verse and then you wrap it and then you do it again.
Oh, okay.
So
no, it's very.
There
basic,
are some writing. There are some writing, but it's not quite the same system. It's more of a testing and then reapplying. So So, but this system was also available for the government was supposed to push it out in the late 90s.
Okay.
So after 1994, the government was supposed to push this out. It was in Afrikaans and in Xhosa. Okay. So they were going to teach adults, for adult literacy, they're going to teach adults to read through writing. Okay. And it just completely fell through the cracks. Okay. So a lot of these strategies just, that's why my attitude is we need to actually work from the grassroots and from the ground up, because you cannot rely on authorities. Yeah. The position of government and authorities is always going to get infiltrated by people who just don't care.
That's true.
It's a social scientific phenomenon that keeps repeating itself. Noam Chomsky, in his book Understanding Power, he talks about how the corporates impact the media impacts the political position of people, although for the past couple of years we saw a bit of a pushback. Yeah. But that is the cycle that keeps repeating itself. Yeah. So if you want to see change, you're going to have to do it from the ground up. Like, don't wait for the government to save you. It's not going to happen ever. Yeah. You understand? You're not going to get some savior coming in from the top down. It's not going to happen. So, and since we're on the subject of literacy, I worked for an NGO that basically did a couple of projects: feeding, education, ECD. They did skills, youth. But the project that impressed me the most was the adult literacy. Yeah. And the adult literacy really impressed me because it's like Allah says in the Quran, He doesn't change a people's outer condition until they change who they are in themselves. And for example, one woman, she learned to read. She couldn't read before. And she learned to read, and it impacted her self-esteem so positively that she was able to take her son who was a gangster and basically set him straight. Like you could see that ripple effect. And in that same area, there was a guy who was talking about his situation, and he was talking about his brother. His brother was a gangster, and I said to him, well, how come your brother ended up in a gang and you didn't? He says, because I read. That was his simple, straightforward answer. Yeah. So you can appreciate then that the more women are educated, the more women are literate and educated, how that positively impacts the children, the youth, the future, therefore the nation. Therefore, there is this leverage of empowered people, which means that if you are the government, if you are the leaders, you're going to have to step up and require more of yourself.
Of course.
You cannot push everybody down. And I've seen this in families. Like you get a father who's narcissistic, for example. He doesn't want to require more of himself. He doesn't want to grow as a person. So what does he do? He brings everybody else down
to his level,
beneath him. You must be beneath me. I'm not going to grow. I'm going to stay the same because I have no interest in evolving, but I'll bring you down and bring you beneath myself.
Yeah.
And it seems that that's what society does to people. And so we find with South Africa, look, it's been how long since 1994, and things are not improving because we're still attached to the status quo. We're not letting people or facilitating people to overcome their circumstances. People are just too attached to, like, I have to be somewhere on the pyramid. I have to be above you in the pyramid somewhere.
Yeah. There's no such thing as being on the same level.
Yes, we there's got to be some sort of rank, and I've got to be in, I hear it when people say like, oh, my nephew, he's like the something director of Old Mutual, and I'm like, so what? If you believe in Allah, then why would you care about someone's status or rank within a company or position? It doesn't make sense to be impressed by that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You understand? So that's why the education system, I know Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, he says that it's basically a military system to kind of train you to be a good little soldier.
Yes.
To me, it looks more of a factory.
Yeah.
No. So either way, you're supposed to be subservient. So in my research regarding the languages and literacy, because now we've dealt with Asiyah, and now we're going to Asiyah alayhi salam, now we're going to deal with Maryam alayhi salam, and I want to go into her background and what was her world like, because with Asiyah alayhi salam, we went into Egyptology, and it was so exciting and wonderful, and it was such a journey. We found out so many things. But with Maryam alayhi salam, it gets a little bit complicated now. Okay. Because now you've got this complete hijack of history. And it's like, now you want to find out all this information about what that world was like. And, you have to navigate past people that have their agenda, who are now repeating old scriptures from the Old Testament, New Testament, adapting it to suit their narrative, and this is where things get a little bit awkward. So what I started doing, and this is how we came to the topic of liberty through literacy, and of course what's interesting is that it actually brings us all together, because in my discovery, which I've started sharing already on our Facebook page and Instagram, is that the ancient Egypt alphabet, it was hieroglyphics, then it became an alphabet. The Phoenicians then took over. Okay. So from the Phoenician alphabet, you get the Proto-Syriac. I got the other way around. It's actually ancient Egypt, then Proto-Syriac, then Phoenician. From Phoenician, you then have the Aramaic, and then from the Aramaic, you have the Hebrew and the Arabic. Okay. And the Phoenician also goes in the other direction to Greek, and then from Greek you have all the Western languages and alphabet. You've got the Roman. The Roman comes from our Roman alphabet. And please hear the word alphabet. Yes. Alphabet. Alif, alpha. Yes. You see that. So our Roman comes from the Greek. So you can see there's a lot of similarities there. And the Arabic was actually spoken. It's actually older. Somebody argued, I read this article where somebody said that the Arabic's actually older than the Hebrew, because it's a much more conservative language, especially if you look at the duals and the root meanings. Yes. So it makes sense that it was older and more preserved if you consider that the desert environment preserved the language in its spoken form. But as we discussed earlier, there aren't really a lot of trees, or papyrus, so it's like they're not going to develop the writing system. Yeah. The Hebrews, they developed the writing system before the Arabs did. Okay. So Arabic is old in terms of speaking, but Hebrew is old in terms of the writing system. Yes. And the Arabic actually takes a lot from the Nabatean.
Right.
Okay, so that's why you have that like lovely cursive that just flows.
Yes.
You see. So it went through the diagram, you can actually see there it went through Phoenician, then Aramaic, and then Nabatean, and then you get to the Arabic.
Okay. Right. So if you would like to have a look at these diagrams that we are referring to, please head on over to the Pathways_IUC Instagram or the Pathways at Women's Forum Facebook page. You'll be able to follow along. Sister Lila does keep the page updated with regards to the discussions that we have. So head on over to those platforms for those diagrams that you can refer to them.
And just to point out something else that's interesting, the Phoenician alphabet, 1250 BC. Okay. They also have Aleph, and they've got Waw, they've got Kaf, which is the palm of a hand. That's where they got it from. You'll notice Lamed is obviously similar to Lam, Mem, Noon, and the Ayn is very interesting.
Yeah.
And the Sode, and Kof, as well as Shin and Tor.
All right.
Okay, so you do see a lot of similarities, and then you'll notice, for example, what's interesting now in Greek, it's called. So we have alphabet.
Yes.
Okay, in Greek it's beta.
Okay.
So here in the Venetian, you see it's called bet.
Bet.
It's probably pronounced bet, and it's a house.
Okay.
Right.
And in Arabic that would be bait.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you understand.
Yes.
It is literally so that the letter B was literally a house.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
So they actually drew it. So that the symbol is a symbol of a house in their language. So it is literally a house.
All right.
So that the Arabic bait comes all the way back from the Phoenician 1250 BC.
Oh wow.
You see
Language
that?
is absolutely fascinating.
It is fascinating. It gets even more fascinating. Let's look at Yod for hand.
All right.
You see that? So it is Yod for hand because it is literally a hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what is the Arabic substitute? It's hard to say because now the Hebrews will tell you that the Yod, because in Hebrew it's also Yod. Okay. It's drawn to look like a hand. It came from the symbol of hand.
Okay.
It is literally that thing. But it's interchangeable, so it's not always pronounced. So if you look at the name of Isa alayhi salam, because they'll argue, okay, no, the name Isa was originally Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
It's spelled with a Yod. But that Yod is almost like a weak letter verb or a weak letter that becomes interchangeable. So sometimes it becomes an I, like an E sound for igloo.
Okay.
You understand? So now you know how you get the sound of Isa.
Yes.
In Greek it's like Ishos. And then in Latin it's Isus.
Okay.
So now do you see, and then you take the S away because they added the S at the end to make it masculine. Take the S away and you get Isa.
Isa. Yes.
You see, so that's how you get Isa.
Oh, wow.
And then with the Hebrew, between the Hebrew and the Arabic, you get a lot of interchanging between the shin and the sin sound.
Yes.
So like salam
And
shalom.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how isha, that sh kind of swaps around a little bit.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing to note is Ramesses. Think of the name Ramesses, Jesus, Moses, and Osiris.
Okay.
Right. So the Quran says of the Jews are those who say that Usair is the son of God, and then Isus is, the Christians say that Isus is the son of God, right? If you take the S off the end of Osiris, you get Usair.
Usair.
There you go. So that's who they're referring to. And you'll find that became Isa alayhi salam. So the story of Isa and the story of Osiris became mixed up.
Okay.
You understand? Does that make sense? There's a lot of parallels there. Moses, take the S away from Moses because the Greeks added an S to make it masculine. You get Musa, right? Musa actually means born. And it does not mean Moshe, which is the Hebrew, which means he drew out.
Okay.
Because Hebrew, first of all, did not exist in the time of Asiyah alayhi salam, or the Pharaoh's daughter, or anybody of that time.
Yes.
Hebrew did not exist. You only had the ancient Egypt language. Musa, similar. Now look at Ramasi. Take the S again. Take the S away.
Ramas.
You get Ra. Ra is the quote unquote sun god or sun. The Masa again means born of the sun or son of the sun. You understand?
Yes.
And Musa just means born.
Born. Yes.
Okay. Here's something else that's also really fun and exciting. Asiyah.
Yes.
Asiyah. I thought like everybody else that it meant disobedient. I thought
rebellious.
I thought that, but it's spelled with the alif and sin, and then
Okay, not an ayn.
No, not
it's
an
not
ayn.
an ayn. It's
Not
an
an
alif.
ayn. Not the disobedient is with the ayn and a sod.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So that
Asiyah is alif sin.
Yes. So that hadith about the Prophet Muhammad SAW changing Asiyah's. It's like it's actually not that easy. Like when you combine the two.
Yes.
Where Asiyah is very easy to pronounce, but I looked up Asiyah in ancient Egypt means she is insightful.
Okay.
And I could not find Asiyah in the Arabic dictionary, but according to somebody online, it means pensive, to mean that she is pensive as in deep in thought.
Okay.
So you can see there is a similarity
Similarities.
between being insightful and deep in thought. And remember
Yes.
that you've got the ancient Egyptian language, branching out into other languages and alphabets.
well.
So you're going to find similarities. Yeah.
Definitely. This discussion is absolutely fascinating, and I feel like we'll have to continue next week, inshallah. We sort of bridging the gap, and when we're using language to take us from Asiyah to Maryam alayhi salam, and we'll continue to do that. It might seem a little obscure to a certain extent, but don't worry, just bear with us, and inshallah we'll get to we'll all get to the destination collectively. Now, if you'd like a link to the video that Sister Lila has mentioned, just pop me a WhatsApp on 078611112. I'll send you a link to the YouTube video, as well as links to the Pathways at _IUC Instagram page, as well as the Pathways at Women's Forum Facebook page, where you can check out some of the diagrams that Sister Lila has been speaking to us about and taking through, which sort of depicts the evolution of language from the Phoenician to the Greek to the Roman, and all of these sort of things. It's quite interesting. It's very fascinating, and inshallah next week we'll continue our discussion. Sister Lila, shukran so much for the time that you and the research that you put into bringing this content to us. I'm absolutely enjoying this series, and so until next week, inshallah, you take care, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.